Hello, my name is Brett Formosa, and welcome to a Unity tutorial video series for beginners. For this series, I will go through each step with the mindset that all you've done is install Unity with no prior research or experience to make sure everyone can feel included and learn as we go. You can contact me either through the comment section down below, by visiting my personal website, or by leaving a message on my itch.io page. The links are in the description of this video. Last video, we made the timer UI and the timer functionality so the game doesn't play for too long if the player doesn't reach the required score to win. In this video, we are going to create a main menu that will be the start of the game and then also create a screen that once the game finishes, there will be an option to return to the main menu, restart the game, or quit the game entirely. Let's get started with part 8. The first thing we are going to do is make the main menu. In the Project Assets window, right-click, go to Create, New Scene. Name this new scene Main Menu. A scene is the area we have been adding the game objects to, as well as the UI and scripts in the Unity editor. A simple game such as this could all potentially be in just one scene. More complex games, however, could require numerous scenes. A game object that works in one scene won't work when another scene is active unless you have Don't Destroy Unload attached to the script for the game object, for example. However, this is way out of scope of this current project, and I will touch on that in a future video. Let's go to the main menu scene by double-clicking on it, and let's create a TextMesh Pro UI element. We will name this game object title, and let's create a title for our game. Space Race is already a trademarked entity, so I'm going to use the name Race in Space based off of the original Space Race game title. Let's scale this to make the title big and also anchor it to the top middle of the canvas. Change around the settings until you are happy with how the title looks. Once you are happy with how it looks, let's create a few buttons. Right-click on the hierarchy, for example, and go to UI, Button, TextMesh Pro. I will go over what this button game object does in a moment, but let's put it in the center of the screen and scale it so it looks good. We are also going to anchor this button to the top middle again. Let's duplicate this button and anchor it to the bottom middle of the screen. Rename the first button Play Button and the second button to Quit Button. We don't want the buttons to say button, as they won't say exactly what the context of the button is. Open up the Play Button game object and you'll see a text TMP option. Click on that and let's change the text to say play. Do the same with the Quit button, but instead of typing play, let's type quit. A button is just that, a button. When the game is playing, if the player hovers over the button, they can click it and it will do or perform a portion of code that you want the button to do. There are thousands of things a button can do. They are interactable pieces of UI to help the player do exactly what you need. For the button game object in the button component, interactable makes the player able to click the button or not. You can disable this and re-enable it through code if an option becomes available for the player, for example. Transition simply means how you want the button to transition when it is normal, highlighted, pressed, etc., etc. Currently, it is set to color tint, which means that when the button is normal, it is one color. When it's highlighted, it will be changed to another color. And when it's pressed, it will change to another color. You can also change the duration the transition takes effect, as well as the color multiplier. If you click on the transition drop-down, you will see a few other options. None if you don't want to transition at all. Sprite swap, which means instead of changing color, you can change the sprite images of the button so they can change instead. And animation, if you want the button to change position or size if the button is highlighted or pressed, for example. We're going to leave the transition to color tint for now, as there is no need to change it. However, feel free to play around with the settings if you wish. I won't go over the navigation and visualize button options. However, the on-click portion of this component we will get into in a later part of the video when we start adding the functionality to the button. Let's change the background color to black for the main menu scene, which we can do this by clicking the main camera game object, and on the background option, click it and change it to black or a color of your choosing. I am choosing black to represent the darkness of space and also have a nice contrast between the main menu buttons and title. Save this scene by saving the project and move the main menu scene to the scenes folder where the game scene is. If you open the scenes folder, you will see the game scene is titled sample scene. That is the default name of the first scene in any Unity project. Rename the sample scene to game scene, and let's head back into the game scene. We are going to create the game over panel now. Right click on the hierarchy and go to UI and then click panel. Rename the panel to game over panel. As you can see in the game view window, there is a white haze, if you will, over the game. That is the panel. It is currently slightly transparent and it also fills the whole screen. A panel is similar to a window that can hold numerous game objects in it that don't need to be fully available at all times. Change the scale of the panel to 0.75 so it doesn't fill the entire screen, but it is still large enough to add the elements we need to add. We should also change the transparency so we can see everything a little more clearly when it does pop up. Under the color option, there is an alpha setting. Increase that to the full amount and the panel will no longer be transparent. We can also change the color to something other than white if you desire. As usual, I'm going to make it a dark gray so it's not fully black, but it still can be in the space theme. Similar to the main menu, let's create a Text Mesh Pro game object attached to the panel. Anchor it to the top middle and change the text to Game Over. Create 3 buttons as well and change the text to Main Menu, Restart, and Quit respectively, and anchor them to the top middle, middle, and bottom middle so they are properly anchored. Lastly, change the names of the game objects to best represent the game objects themselves. Feel free to change the placement or wording or even how the buttons look if you wish. Just be sure to properly anchor them just in case someone with a different size monitor can still play and enjoy the game once you export it. One of the reasons why we make sure everything is properly named is to maintain an organized hierarchy. So we know what every game object is specifically so we don't waste time trying to figure out and search for a specific game object. It's always good to stay properly organized even if you are working solo to minimize time wasting. But if you are working with a group of people, staying organized helps minimize headaches and potential mistakes. It's always best to be prepared than not. Once the panel looks how you would like it to look, we have created the game over panel and the main menu. Now, all we need to do is make sure the functionality works. We don't need to look at the panel right this moment, so let's turn the panel's visibility off for now, as the panel shouldn't be active right away when we play the game. We should create an empty game object and call it Game Manager, and also create a script of the same name. This script will control the functionality of the menus and buttons. You'll notice the game manager script will also look different. It will be a cogwheel instead of a proper script. This is actually a bug in Unity that hasn't been patched out, even though it's been a part of Unity for a number of years. There are a few different names of scripts that will change the icons. It's just how it is, and there's no need to be alarmed. Anyways, with that in mind, let's open the Game Manager script. We don't need the start or update functions, so let's remove them. Again, the purpose of this script is to give the main menu and game over panel buttons functionality. So we need to add functionality to main menu, restart, and quit for the functionality of the game over panel buttons, and also the play and quit buttons on the main menu. The play and restart buttons will theoretically have the same functionality, while the quit on both the panel and the main menu will also have the same functionality. So we just need 3 different functions for the buttons. Let's create the main menu button's play and the game over panel's restart functionality, and we'll just call this public void play game. Now, to change from scene to scene, we need to look at 2 different things. The first is what number of scenes are in the scene order, and the other is adding the library to the code for the scenes to be managed via code. Let's quickly check this now by going back into the Unity editor. Click on File, then Build Settings. This will open up a window that has a few key things that we use and interact with. The top scenes in Build panel is what we want to focus on for now, while the bottom portion of the window is stuff that will be touched on in the last video of this tutorial series. For the scenes in Build, we just see one scene, the game scene. We need to make sure the main menu scene is in here. Go into the scene folder and drag and drop the main menu scene, and it will populate in the panel. Another way you can add a scene is by opening the scene in the Unity editor and clicking Add Open Scenes. This will add the current scene you are in into this panel as well. Notice that there is a 0 on the right side of game scene and also a 1 on the right side of main menu. This shows the order of which the scenes are in. When you start the game, the 0 scene will be the main scene shown. We don't want the game scene to be shown as the first scene, so drag the main menu scene higher than game scene to change the order. With both of these scenes in place, and the main menu scene being the first scene that will run when the program is run, then we can jump back into the code. We do this by writing using Unity Engine.Scene Management. With this out of the way, we can get to writing the scripts for the button functionality now. In the play game function, we want to write scene manager dot load scene and then in parentheses 1. This will load the scene in the 1 position in the build settings, which is our game scene. This is the only thing we need to add for this function. Next is the quit button functionality. Let's write public void quit game and write application.quit in the curly brackets. Perfect. There is button functionality already finished. Let's head back into the Unity editor and go to the main menu scene. To add functionality to the buttons, we need to recreate the Game Manager game object in the scene and attach the Game Manager script to the game object. Now click on the play button. Remember when I said we were going to touch on the on-click portion of the button component? This is where we do that. Click on the plus button where it says None object. Drag the Game Manager game object to fill that in. On the now enabled drop down where it says no function, we just need to find the play game function for the button to do what we need it to do. Click on the drop down, Game Manager, and finally play game. We have now added functionality to the play game button. We need to do the same for the quit button, but instead of play game, we use the quit game function. Make note, however, when playing the game in the Unity editor, application.quit doesn't do anything. So if we were to hit play right now, the quit button won't do anything. However, once we build the game, it will provide the functionality that we want it to do. We can, however, make sure it's working by going back in the code and adding one quick line. Below application.quit, we can write the following: debug log, and then in parentheses and quotations, quitting game ... or any message that you see fit. This line will give a message in the debug window that says quitting game to make sure that the game is actually quitting. Debug.log is a good way to make sure something is running properly, as it gives you the notes in the debug window that things are either running smoothly or not running at all. Go ahead and hit play and click on the quit button and see what happens. Perfect. Now we just need to make sure the game over panel pops up when the timer runs out. Let's go back into the game scene and open up the Countdown UI script. We need to add a new variable so that the script knows to open the game over panel. So let's write public game object game over panel. Then in the countdown function, let's write else if current time is less than and the equal sign 0. And then in the curly brackets, we will write game over panel dot set active, and then in parentheses, true. What this does is turns on the visibility for the game over panel. We need to make sure it's also turned off when the game starts. So go to the start function and add game over panel dot set active, and then in parentheses, false. When the set active for an object is false, the visibility is turned off. When it's true, the visibility for the object is turned on so the player can see the object. You can do this with any game object. Save the script, and let's jump back into the Unity editor and add the game over panel to the timer's script so it knows the game object we need to turn on. Click play, and let's see if it works. You can cheat and change the current time to 5 to speed up the process. Perfect. It seems to work. Now, we have a mostly full game loop. Go back to the main menu scene and try out the play button, which should jump straight into the game scene to play. We are done with the intended video, so I am going to end it here. You may be wondering the following. We haven't hooked up the max score opening the game over screen, or we haven't set up the buttons for when the game over panel is opened. You are right with this. Let's see how far you've come by doing this yourself. The answers, like the last challenge, will be in the next video. So before you move on, I recommend trying to do the following without guidance. Change the game scene background to black, add button functionality to the game over panel buttons, and make the code for when the score increases to the max score turn on the game over panel as well. The coding for all of these challenges and even the answers for all of these challenges are within this video for the most part. In the next video, along with finishing up those tasks, we will also be importing and changing the player game object sprite, as well as importing a font for the game over panel and the title screen titles so it doesn't look boring. Until then, take care and I will see you in the next video.